in terms of that battle, what are some of the fortifications against greed, and why do you think greed is it seems to be a virtue now in our culture? There, how has it been? Thomas Sowell said that envy was a terrible vice, but it was transmuted into a virtue under the name of social justice. So what has greed? I think success, really. He's very successful.
There's a corrupted reading of Adam Smith and the concept of the invisible hand, which was taught to me by my introduction to economics teacher when I was in college, with a very simple heuristic device that he used in almost every class to teach us the law of supply and demand and other fundamental economic laws. He would begin by saying, assume greed. Assume greed. Then everything else logically would follow from that. Right. And so markets will work efficiently if you assume greed. Now, on that corrupted view of Smith, you take a vice, greed, and by an invisible hand, it's turned into a virtue. So right. We individually act greedily. The net result for society is the good of prosperity. But I really think that is a corruption of Smith and of this whole tradition of the moral philosophy of economics, which is really what Smith is all about. Smith is not an economist in any modern sense. He's a philosopher.
And a moral philosopher. Economy, people forget that economics was the third branch of moral philosophy.
He doesn't assume that people will be greedy. I mean, some people will be greedy. There are all sorts of reasons, apart from greed, that you might want to have money or wealth. Right. You might want it for charitable purposes. You might want it for, not for itself, but for the status that attaches to it. That's not virtuous, but strictly speaking, what you're after there is not the money itself. The miser is after the money itself, but he's a rather pathetic figure. I'd like to talk in our video conversation a bit about the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, because right. What makes Scrooge such a pathetic figure is that he's not after the money for status. He's not after the money to buy things with. He doesn't buy anything. He won't even buy an extra piece of bread at dinner. He's after the money just for its own sake. That's pure greed, but it's clearly a pathology. It does him no good. It doesn't do anybody any good. And it's only when the visiting spirits strip away the illusions that have caused him to fall into this mistake of treating money as if it's something good in itself and not simply something instrumentally valuable when it's valuable at all. It's only after the angels or the spirits strip that away that he can reform his life.
It's interesting that you're bringing that up, because the miser, it's really about fear, isn't it? Because they fear poverty, or they fear, very often they come out of impoverished circumstances, and there's a fear that they're going to go back to that or lose it. And it's fear that, Jacob Marley, when he shows up, it's really fear that changes Scrooge, realizing that he's got limited time and he could end up with all those treasure chests chained to him.